For 20-year-old Mark, time wasn't just money, it was everything. He was a disciple of the digital hustle, a young man obsessed with the volatile world of crypto trading and online ventures. From the command center of his bedroom, he watched charts, traded assets, and chased a future of wealth and independence. In his mind, every second spent on mundane family chores was a second stolen from his future empire. His family, especially his 10-year-old brother, David, had become a distraction he could no longer afford. Their father, Mr. Collins, a single dad who worked long, unpredictable shifts as a paramedic, saw the growing distance. He admired his older son's ambition but was deeply troubled by his growing selfishness. David, a bright, cheerful boy who suffered from severe asthma, was the heart of their small family, and his medical needs were a non-negotiable priority. The moment that would change everything arrived on a frantic Friday afternoon. Mr. Collins was unexpectedly called in for a grueling double shift. He pulled Mark away from his computer, his expression serious and his instructions precise. "Mark, I have to go," he said, handing him a small box of medicine. "David's nebulizer machine is on the kitchen counter. It needs to be cleaned and refilled with a new vial of this medicine by 9 o'clock tonight, not 9:01. 9. Do you understand me? This is not a chore. This is his lifeline." "Yeah, Dad, I got it." "PM, loud and clear," Mark replied, his eyes already flicking back to the glowing charts on his monitor. As his father left, Mark felt a surge of annoyance. This was a critical night in the market. He couldn't be bothered with stupid machine cleaning. He glanced at the nebulizer on the counter, a silent, plastic reminder of the responsibility he didn't want. "I'll do it in a few minutes," he told himself, a promise he had no intention of keeping. He returned to his room and was instantly consumed by the thrill of the trade. The numbers danced, the charts spiked and dipped, and the real world, with its responsibilities and its asthmatic little brothers, faded into an irrelevant hum. The nebulizer sat on the counter, forgotten. 9 o'clock came and went, a silent, unnoticed deadline passing in the night. Hours later, deep in the quiet of the house, David woke up with a familiar, terrifying tightness in his chest. A cough, at first small, quickly grew into a desperate, wheezing gasp for air. His asthma attack had come on suddenly and with a frightening intensity. He stumbled out of his bedroom and made his way to the kitchen, his small body trembling, his only thought the life-giving mist of his nebulizer. He reached the counter and his heart seized with a terror worse than the attack itself. The machine was there, but it was empty and dirty from the morning's use. The box with the new medicine sat beside it, unopened. "Mark," he wheezed, his voice a tiny, strangled sound. He tried to call out again, but his airway was closing. Panic gave way to a dizzying blackness. He collapsed onto the cold kitchen floor, his small hand outstretched towards the machine that was supposed to save him. It was the thud of his brother's body hitting the floor that finally pierced through the digital cocoon of Mark's focus. He ripped off his headphones. "David?" he called out, annoyed. The silence that answered was heavy and unnatural. He walked out of his room and saw his little brother lying motionless on the kitchen floor, his face pale, his lips tinged with a terrifying shade of blue. The world stopped. In that instant, Mark's charts, his profits, his entire digital empire, turned to dust. All that mattered was the small, still form on the floor and the empty nebulizer on the counter, a monument to his catastrophic negligence. His hands shaking, his mind screaming, he fumbled for his phone and dialed 911, his voice a panicked, broken sob as he stared at the unused medicine, the symbol of a promise he had so casually broken. The distant wail of an approaching ambulance siren was the sound of his world, and his brother's, hanging by a thread. The harsh, sterile light of the hospital waiting room was a world away from the glowing screens of Mark's ambition. His younger brother, David, had been stabilized and was now sleeping in a pediatric ward, out of immediate danger. Mark sat slumped in a plastic chair, the panicked adrenaline having been replaced by a hollow, soul-crushing guilt. He was staring at nothing when his father finally arrived, still in his paramedic's uniform, his face etched with an exhaustion that went far beyond his double shift. Mr. Collins didn't yell. He didn't rush over. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, his gaze fixed on his older son. Then he walked over and sat down, a heavy silence settling between them. "The doctors told me what happened," he said, his voice quiet and devoid of emotion. They told me how close he came. He turned to look at Mark, his eyes filled not with anger, but with a deep, devastating question. What was more important than your brother's life, Mark? Tell me, what trade was so valuable that you forgot to keep your only brother breathing? The quiet, simple question was more cutting than any accusation. Mark broke down, his body shaking with ragged, silent sobs. I forgot, he choked out. I got busy, and I forgot. You didn't forget, his father corrected him, his voice still quiet but now hard as granite. You chose your screen over your family. You're so obsessed with playing the part of a man making money that you forgot the very first job of a man is to protect his own. You failed tonight. There is no other way to say it. Back at their house the next day, the punishment was laid out. It was not a punishment of anger, but of cold, logical consequence. Your side hustle is over, Mr. Collins said, unplugging Mark's entire computer setup and placing the tower in the hall closet. Your smartphone is now this. He handed Mark an old basic flip phone. Your life as a trader is finished. Your new life is one of service. The terms were absolute. First, Mark would become David's full-time caregiver. He was responsible for administering every dose of medication on a strict, written schedule. He would cook his brother's meals to ensure they were healthy. And for the first week, he would sleep in a sleeping bag on the floor of David's room, to be there instantly if his brother's breathing became labored in the night. Second, his father continued, you will learn the responsibility you abandoned. You are enrolling in the next available certified first aid and CPR course for caregivers. You will learn what to do in an emergency, because you have proven you cannot be trusted. Finally, he placed a pen and paper on the table. And you will write a letter to your brother, an apology, and a promise, a contract of responsibility that you will read to him, and that you will never, ever break again. The following days were a blur of humbling, focused care. Mark learned the names of David's medications, the complexities of his condition. He spent his nights listening to the quiet, steady rhythm of his little brother's breathing, a sound that was now the most precious in the world, a constant reminder of how close he had come to silencing it forever. The day he read his letter to David, his voice cracked with an emotion he hadn't shown in years. David, in his innocent, 10-year-old way, simply reached out and took his big brother's hand. It's okay, Mark, he said. You're here now. The simple forgiveness was a fresh wave of shame and a powerful dose of motivation. A month later, Mark was in the living room, showing David how to properly use a new, more efficient inhaler, a technique he had learned in his first aid course. His father stood in the doorway, watching, a quiet, hopeful look on his face. The computer remained in the closet. The hustle was gone. Mark was no longer a trader, a hustler, a boy chasing a digital fortune. He was a brother, and he had learned, in the most terrifying way imaginable, that the most valuable asset you can ever have is the trust of your family, and the greatest responsibility in the world is making sure they are safe, no matter the cost to your own ambitions.